Would you mind telling me whose brain I did put in?
And you won't be angry?
I will not be angry.
Abby someone.
Abby someone. Abby who?
Abby normal.
This is the Abby Normal Podcast, here to tell you that you're weird, and that's normal. September is National Suicide Prevention Month, and I'll share some resources for you at the end of this episode. But before we go 1 second further, the number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK. As many of you, my family has been impacted by a suicide attempt. And this is incredibly difficult to talk about. It's so difficult that by the time I talked to Annie and my sister Holly about it, a decade had gone by. But that didn't mean we weren't affected by it or hadn't thought about it. Quite the contrary. It completely changed the course of their lives. It just took time, plus a weekend away in the cabin in the woods, to be able to talk about the pain we carry from one day years ago. Holly and Annie are getting the fires going, and we're convincing our dogs to lay down and be quiet.
Yeah, like there wasn't enough heat
to create the vacuum.
Yeah. Do you think I should try to close it now that it's going?
Let's give it a few more minutes to continue to get enough oxygen in there.
Thank you for being a brain outside my body.
You're welcome. Jasper?
Stop getting into trouble.
No, you're fine. You can stay. Okay.
Your bestie Holly is upstairs starting a fire.
Yeah, because we are at my cabin in the woods in the Sierra National Forest.
And she's a problem solver.
She is. Always has been.
Yeah.
Or a problem starter.
Like both simultaneously.
Both, yeah.
Captain, go to your bed.
So what do you love about Holly?
Oh my god, everything. Like, we are a family. Like, she's just so wonderful. Like, she's so smart. And she's very good. Like, she wants to do right by people all the time. And she's just always there. She's there. If you need her, she's there. And I feel like with her, it's a very even give and take relationship. Like, when I need it, she's there. And when she needs it, I'm there. So it's just, I feel like with her, there's always been a very great balance that I haven't found in a lot of other friendships.
You may know, but Holly and Annie are BFFs. You heard the love there. But back when they were late teens, early 20s, they lived together with several other roommates. It was great. And then there was a point in time that they stopped speaking. We'll get into why. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So you guys were living together. You were passing notes on your door. Annie, you were basically a baby.
Yes.
And did you guys get any tiffs when you lived together?
I mean, I'm sure we did, but it was probably about dumb shit like cleaning.
Yeah.
I feel like we already went over the fact that I have no memory.
Right. So
if
everything
there was fights, you would have to ask.
Everything was glorious.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was actually a really great time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, we're both clean people.
We are.
And
So
we
it's
pay our
not
bills on
you
time.
that I had a tiff with. It was
The house in general, which
The
is
others.
just like having a house with 4 or 5 people who are all
of a certain age.
yeah,
like 20 years old.
21 and below.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's gonna
the
be
numerous
hard.
friends and boyfriends and shit that were
Yes,
over. Like,
there's a lot of people coming
sometimes
through.
I had to work opening shifts at the coffee shop, so I would come out of my room and be like,
Yeah.
everybody needs to shut the fuck up right now.
Because I have to be up in 2 hours for work.
Or I will not bring home the leftover pastries.
Right.
So everybody needs to shut the fuck up. But usually if I said something, they did. So, like,
Yeah,
it would be annoying.
I don't feel like there was many, if any, people in our house who were like, I'm an asshole because I'm an asshole.
No.
It was more just like, we're young and self-centered.
Yeah,
and,
no,
like,
I
don't
didn't-
understand.
That, and, like, if you said something, like, if you brought it to attention.
Be like, oh,
Shucks, sorry.
Sorry.
And then at that point, also, when I got to be a thing, like, we also made the garage, like, a hangout space.
Yeah.
So if people were being loud, they just...
Until Dad vetoed it because we were smoking in there.
Yeah, well, he didn't like his little girl smoking.
No. I mean, like, I'm sure there's been times where I was just, like, a self-centered bitch. And you were like, God damn it. Whatever.
Yeah, but it wasn't anything that was ever like...
Yeah, it wasn't like a thing. We didn't talk for a long time.
After PJ.
Right. Well, and with Nate.
It was the PJ thing. It wasn't...
Yeah.
I mean, I was with Nate, but...
Yeah, but it was PJ related.
Why didn't you talk after PJ?
Because I was fully traumatized.
Yeah, which is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, but I would think you guys would like...
No, I was also traumatized.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're both traumatized, so I would feel like you
But,
would
like,
reach out to
not
each other.
processing.
No, we weren't processing well,
No.
and...
I, like, ran away shortly after that.
Yeah, she ran away shortly after that.
Yeah.
That was when she was gone for a while, and then...
Mm-hmm. And then I got pregnant.
Yeah.
I kind of, like, forget that part of the narrative. Because Aaron and I will, like, periodically joke around about how... Oh... Your sister had dreadlocks and ran away and cultivated marijuana and whatever. And then, surprise, she's pregnant. She lives
Yeah.
with us and she has a baby and now she's a great mom. Like, that's kind of like the narrative that we have in
Right.
our brains.
Yeah.
And I feel like we completely have blocked the PJ part from the story.
Yeah, no, and it was actually really traumatic, and that was, like, the impetus of, like... Yeah, we basically took, like, a year break.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were mad at each other
No.
or anything happened.
Mm-mm.
We were just like so traumatized from the PJ thing. And then the first time I saw her was at the hospital
Yeah.
when you gave birth. We passed each other in the hallway, and that was the first time we saw each other in like a year.
Mm-hmm.
And she had her sister locks.
Mm-hmm.
So we were all basically like, put that in a box.
Yeah.
Close it up, put a bow in
Yeah.
it, put it away, and then we will never think about it again.
Except I think about it all the time. Like, I still have weird, like, almost like PTSD from the PJ experience.
Like, have you gotten therapy for that?
I went to therapy for a little while, yeah.
Like, immediately thereafter? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
no, like, post-processing.
No, and I think it's just, like, weird. Like, because, you know, I'm a little OCD, so I have, like, weird, like, tics about it. So, like, immediately after... Should we just, like... Is that, like, an invasion of privacy if we tell the story of what happened?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It's your story, boo-boo.
Well, I mean, I feel like you should start it. He was your boyfriend.
But
No.
she didn't encounter it. It's your story.
Yeah.
So, we're going to talk about suicide. This is your official trigger warning to X out of this episode if you need to. You are loved, and it's okay to go. We'll catch you on the next one. Annie has asked a valid question, and I think it's the question that prevents conversation between people that have experienced a loved one's suicide or suicide attempt. It feels like you're external from the situation. It's not your story because you're only an observer, not the one that has suffered in the traditional sense. You somehow don't have a right to talk about it. But it is your story too. So we're going to share it with hopefully all respect to the individual referenced using a fake name.
So Holly was dating this guy called PJ. Well, you guys had broken up, right?
Yeah, I left him. And no one knew.
No one knew about it. I was at work that day. It was Mother's Day.
Was Mother's Day.
It was definitely Mother's
was
Day. That is my
definitely-
input in the story
definitely
later on.
It was
Mother's
Mother's Day.
Day.
I remember that. And
Oh my god.
I was at work. And
Right? I'm like, please give me that glass.
And,
Thank you.
PJ texted me while I was at work or called me and was like, hey, do you want to hang out? And I was like, sure, whatever. I'm at work. I'll come over after work. And he was like, okay, great. What time do you get off? And I told him, and I was like, I'll come over after. So I got off work and I called him and I was like, hey, I'm heading over. He was like, cool. See you in a few. And then I texted him when I got there to be like, hey, I'm here. And he didn't answer. So I called him and he didn't answer. So I walked into his house. And the way the house was set up is you like walk in the front door and you're in the living room. And then you go kind of
You keep
around the
going.
side wall. And there's a
Mm,
kitchen.
kitchen.
And from the kitchen, you can see into the backyard. There's a big picture window. You can see straight through to the backyard, in which there was a very big tree right in the middle of the picture window. he had hung himself from a monster guitar cable from the tree. So, like, the thing that felt super shitty about it was, like, he knew that's what he was going to do, and he was calling someone to find him. And I was like, why did you pick me? And I don't think there was any thought behind who.
Right. I mean, you're so sick at that point.
Yeah, like, I don't think it,
You
like,
can't
now I
expect
don't think it
something
was
to be
malicious.
reasonable. Yeah.
But, like, at the time I was like, what in the actual fuck? So I didn't know what to do, because PJ was also, like, he was over 6 feet tall. Like,
Yeah.
I could not.
6'3".
Yeah, I couldn't lift him. I couldn't do anything about that. I didn't know what to do. So I remember getting out of the house and getting, like, I don't remember this. I remember suddenly being back in my car, and I remember calling Frick, PJ's best friend and roommate, and Frick never, ever, ever answered his phone. Ever. And he picked up on the second ring, and I kind of don't really remember what I said. I know I said, PJ's dead. He hanged himself in the backyard. And Frick was just like, get out of the house, get out of the house, get out of the house. Like, he was just like, go get Nate, who was my boyfriend at the time. And I should not have been driving, but I did. So I left the house. It turns out Frick was like 2 blocks away on his bike. And it's literally a miracle that he answered his phone. Frick is like was like the biggest flake. Never had his phone on him, or wasn't charged, or he just never answered it. Like, yeah. And I drove to Tower Records, where my boyfriend at the time worked. And so when I walked in, I guess I what I remember is hazy, but I remember one of his coworkers, I don't remember his name, but he had a mohawk, saw me and was like, oh shit, and just walked me immediately into the, like, employee area in the back, and went and got Nate, like, sat me down and went and found Nate. Like, they didn't know where he was in the store. So, and I somehow managed to, like, squeak out what happened, and then the police called me and said I had to come back and give a statement. So Nate drove, obviously. They let him leave work. And I don't really remember. Like, I remember bits and pieces. But I remember getting back to the house. And Frick said, he's not dead yet. And I was like, how? So Frick's dad was an EMT for a paramedic. And I guess, so Frick, like, knew some things. And I guess Frick cut him down. And gave him, like, CPR and mouth to mouth.
Oh my god.
And revived him until the ambulance got there. Which is amazing. Frick is fully a hero.
So who called 911? Frick did?
Frick did. Because I didn't know the address. Like, I didn't know the street address, and all I had was my... Like, they didn't have a landline. I was like... I didn't know how they would trace where it was. Like, I could give...
And you were in shock.
Yeah, and
you don't make reasonable decisions when you're in shock.
Yeah. So I had to sit, like, on the couch, and the way it was positioned, I could see...
The tree.
With the cord still hanging from it. The cut cord. The police were asking me all these questions. I don't really remember that. And I remember a chaplain being there. And I was like, I do not want to talk to you. We went to the hospital. And I know we were at the hospital for a long time. I remember seeing you at the hospital. Did I call? I don't remember. Who called you?
I have no idea.
Yeah. I don't think I did, because I don't think I was...
I have no idea.
Lucid at that point. But I remember seeing you at the hospital. I don't think we really talked.
I think I told you.
That you broke up with him? Yeah. No, you did.
Yeah.
Because I remember where you told me where you were. Yeah. I remember feeling like, I don't know, kind of like what I imagine, like, it feels like to have a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just felt totally slack.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was super weird. And then, yeah, we were at the hospital for a long time, and they had to drill a hole in his skull.
Yeah, for the swelling.
The swelling of his brain to release the pressure. And it was like, it was real, like, touch and go. We didn't know if he was gonna make it. But he did.
He did.
He did.
It had a happy ending for PJ and his family. But that didn't mean it didn't have long-term repercussions for Annie and Holly.
After I knew he was going to live, I wouldn't see him after that. Like, I couldn't. And then I saw him, like, on the floor one day at work, and I was like,
Oh.
I'm going to move to the Bay Area. But yeah, no, so, like, the weird, like, things that I still have where I think about it often is, like, so I remember going home eventually. I don't remember if it was that day or the next day. Like, I know we were at the hospital for a really long time.
Yeah.
But I remember having these weird, like, I don't even know, like, these weird, like, fears that, like, he was gonna try again, like, in my apartment, the apartment that Nate and I had. Because I couldn't rationalize at the time why did he call me? And I think he probably called other people and they were unavailable.
I think you did. I think you tried everyone.
Yeah.
And you were just the person that picked up the phone.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's what it was, but at the time, like, I was just like, what, why? Like, and so, like, the only thing I could think of, like, of how, like, and it was specifically the hanging, like, and, like, where would he hang himself from my apartment? And it was in my shower. Like, that was, like, the thing I kept seeing in my head. So every time I got home, I, like, whipped the shower curtain back. Just to make sure he wasn't in there. I knew he wasn't in there, but it was this weird,
It doesn't
like,
have to be rational.
yeah, irrational, like, fear. And I still do that. I still check the shower when I get home. Now I have a clear shower. I figured out how to kind of, like, combat it.
Yeah.
I got a clear shower curtain.
Smart.
Yeah, so I know he's not in there.
Right.
But yeah, it's like not necessarily like a fear of him being in there anymore. It's just like now it's like a tick.
You know, this story is how many years later? Over a decade. And we're telling this story about this trauma that we relive over and over again. And for Annie, she saw it. And so there's some really tangible trauma there. And there's things that come back in a really visceral way. And for me, it's more emotional. You know, like when I hear stories about people that do this to themselves, it's more emotional. Like, how could you be so selfish? Because I think back to what happened to me afterwards. And it makes me so mad.
Well, it dramatically altered the course of
Yeah.
our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It set both of us on a trauma path that I think ended us up, like, you wouldn't have your kids if that hadn't happened.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have, like, pieced out of the Bay Area as quickly as I did. Or pieced out of
Right.
Fresno to the Bay
To the
Area.
Bay Area.
Right. Yeah, there was decisions that were quickly made
Right.
based on the trauma you
Right.
experienced.
Right.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
it was within like a year that I was like, because it was suddenly like I have to I have to get out of
I
here.
need to get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holly, how did you feel about it? Like right then, like when it happened.
It was a mess. It was a mess. I felt so guilty. Because in my head, it was my fault. You know, I broke up with this guy and then he hung himself. It was my fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, just to be 100% clear, was not.
Right. There was some mental illness involved and some things that he needed to deal with and hadn't. But yeah, there was, I was so young.
Yeah.
Um,
And also, relationships are super intense when you're young.
yeah, and I also have mental health issues of my own.
Yeah,
So
that relationship, if you don't mind me saying in particular, was really
Right.
rather volatile.
It was.
Yeah, it was really.
Yeah, I mean,
it was
he
good, it
was,
was good.
Yeah, he was bipolar, and I have a severe anxiety disorder, so it was like not a great match.
Yeah.
But I didn't even know that what I was going through was traumatic because I was already dealing with a mental health issue, and I worked with this I don't know, mid-60s kind of butch animal trainer, had been around the world and had some really cool stories, And she was the one to kind of ID, like, dude, like, I think you might have PTSD from this. And I kind of wish that I had listened to that. I think it might have been helpful, but I don't know. I think I just ran from it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we both did.
We both did.
So what did you do, Holly?
I literally ran away. I call it when I ran away from home. I had a roommate who was also going through some, I guess, transitional phases and had decided she was going to take off. And so...
You just went with?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, we packed our art supplies because she was an artist. I am not at
You
all.
are. I have a painting of yours from 1,000 years ago still hanging in my kitchen.
That's true. That's true. And it's just as terrible today as it was when I made it. But, yeah, we took off. I don't know. We traveled around. We hung out with some strangers we met and lived out of my car with my bike and my dog. And, you know, during the world, what is it? The Woofers? Worldwide Organic Farmers. Yeah, there's some other initial in there, but had some really great experiences. Got to travel with a friend that I really appreciated and ended. I was about to move to Santa Cruz into a trailer with a young man I had met who I could only describe as he wore a top hat and listened to Nick Cave and drove a Volkswagen Beetle and had just got abducted to UC Santa Cruz. And I was going to move into a trailer with this guy, totally platonic. But had a feeling and went to Planned Parenthood. So shout out to Planned Parenthood. Got a pregnancy test, found out I was pregnant, started crying. The lady said, "Oh, honey, you're going to be fine. I get girls in here who are 16 and get a positive test." And I was like, I live in my car. And then I moved into my big sister's garage.
Yes, Holly, single and homeless with unaddressed PTSD, moved in with me. We're going to do a quick flashback so you can hear my version of what happened, because this affects not only those who witness it, but one click out to those who care and hope to support. Also, we've been talking and stressing and drinking wine for at least an hour, so it's time to refresh bevies and snacks.
So, that Mother's Day.
Right. Yes, you need to
this-
rewind that.
I think this wine is bad.
No, there's no such thing.
Is it?
It's warm in here. Should I put the
Yeah.
cheese back in the...
Yep.
Yeah, because we have no more crackers now. So,
Agreed.
Mother's Day,
Oh my God.
the day of the event.
We're back there.
I mean, we have to like finish the story, right?
Oh my God.
You each provided your perspective. I have to provide mine to
Okay.
finish
Yeah.
the story.
Okay.
So I'm pregnant. I'm like, I don't know, 3 months pregnant or whatever. It's Mother's Day.
Right.
Literally my first Mother's Day.
Right.
Holly, you're supposed to be there. My brother and his girlfriend are also there.
And when you say you're supposed to be there, you mean you're supposed to be at our mother's house to celebrate her life.
That's correct. We're celebrating
And
Mother's Day.
motherhood.
Correct.
That's
yes.
where I'm supposed to be.
That's where you're supposed to be.
Correct.
You are not arriving.
I was not there.
We're celebrating. We're having dinner, drinks, whatever. And then
Well, you would not have been having a drink.
correct. I would not. I would not have been having a drink.
She had a European pregnancy. It's fine.
So I think that it's Dad that actually got the call that something had gone awry and you were not coming and something had happened with PJ, your alleged boyfriend. Dad announces this to the family who's there. I'm devastated. I'm like, what in the world are you talking about?
We had been, PJ and I had been together for some time.
You were engaged.
We were engaged.
Correct. You were very serious.
So he was a part of the family. You
We-
knew him. You loved him.
Correct.
Yeah.
We knew him. We had done family vacations together, et cetera, et cetera. So this was very upsetting. And Dad says this, and then my brother's girlfriend announces to the family that she's pregnant, which is very confusing because I'm not sure how to react. I am both happy for my brother and also very upset with what is happening with my sister and her ex-boyfriend. Very upset. So that is extremely awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of emotions.
It's
Awkward moment.
very conflicting feelings.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Mom and I and your brother go to the hospital, and it sucks, and we're super sad, and we're praying for PJ. We see you, we're praying for you, and it fucking sucked.
I remember seeing you at the hospital.
I don't.
There's nothing even more to say about it.
I mean, like, I remember flashes of seeing people. I remember seeing Abby. I saw you outside the hospital. I was probably chain smoking.
I was definitely chain smoking.
You were not. You
We
were
all
pregnant.
smokers at that
Oh,
point.
right, pregnant. Thank you for reminding me. And I feel like maybe PJ's mom, like I
Yeah,
kind of
Yes,
feel like
she was there.
I have like a
And
flash
Frick-
of her.
Frick was there.
I remember afterwards going home and our friend Fats, like, fist fighting him, not out of anger, but like, really, I'm so fucking angry and fucked up and have no idea how to process this. And so please let me hit you.
And he did.
Yeah.
Of course he did.
So we fought, but it was awful. Mm-hmm. So don't try to kill yourself at a
Please.
normal
Please
audience.
don't.
Just like call the hotline.
Yeah, call the
Abby's
hotline.
gonna put that in.
This is very complex, and there are a lot of feelings involved and a lot of factors that may lead someone to make this decision. Annie and Holly both have clinically diagnosed anxiety-related mental health issues of their own. So how do they square their own struggles with the trauma inflicted on them?
It's also weird to be like, there is a person that I loved, and there is a person that did this thing that is despicable, and somehow they exist in the same body.
Yeah.
So, did you at some point in high school like legitimately try to kill yourself?
Yeah, so I have an anxiety disorder that was misdiagnosed as depression.
Right.
Same.
Yeah.
And your medication did not help you.
Yes, instead of seeing, say, a psychiatrist, our parents kind of blindsided me and took me to a GP, which diagnosed me with depression and put me on a medication which in Europe was not considered an appropriate medication for teenagers because it increased suicidal ideation.
Right.
So I was put onto a medication for a disorder that I did not have with a side effect of suicidal ideation. And while on that medication, yeah, I took a lot of sleeping pills in the hope that I would die.
So, I mean, you have strong feelings about what PJ did.
Yes.
And that it was
Yeah.
not right.
Yeah.
So, how do you reflect on what happened with you? I mean, do you feel like that was as selfish as what
Yeah.
PJ did?
Absolutely. And it was a thing that I thought about when I did it.
How old were you?
Around 16?
And you took pills for the purpose of dying. Mm-hmm. And in the moment, is that what you wanted? Like, I want to be gone forever. I want to leave this world. I want to be gone.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. Same situation. I have anxiety. It was misdiagnosed as depression when I was a teenager. Mine was taking a shit ton of aspirin.
So how do you feel like that's different than what happened with PJ? Or not different?
Personally, I feel like, one, I was a lot younger.
Yeah, I was too.
Two, I don't feel like I would have done it had I not been on the medication that I was on.
Me too.
So in a little bit, I feel like it was outside of my control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was a super, like, hormonal young I was a teenager, like.
I mean, he was too. What were we?
He was not. He was in his 20s. We were in our 20s.
Maybe
I
like
mean,
20.
yeah, 20.
Yeah.
We were no older than 20.
Maybe. I don't know.
I promise you we were no older than 20 because I was 21 and 6 months when I got pregnant.
Yeah.
And this happened right before then. So he was not any older than
I mean, but
20.
I do feel like it's
The difference between 16 and 20.
20 is kind of a lot.
I don't know, man. Like, I definitely had not figured out my mental health by 20.
I hadn't.
Of course, I was going through PTSD from my fiance trying to kill himself.
Right. Like, I don't know. It did feel like I felt much younger then.
Yeah, there was definitely, like, different life constraints. Like
still at home,
Right.
still in what I felt like was a very oppressive.
Didn't have freedom.
Yeah.
Was not in control of your life.
It was extenuating circumstances, and I wasn't trying to do it to.
I didn't want anyone
Mine wasn't
to find
attention.
me.
Yeah, mine wasn't attention.
Yeah, I thought I would drive out into the middle of nowhere.
I thought I would go to sleep and wouldn't wake up.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that's what it was.
And also, men mature later than women.
Yeah.
Like, PJ's 20 is you're 17.
Yeah.
Like, brain development, emotional development.
Well, in our 20s,
Same.
like 25. Like, like, and I think it depends on the person. Like,
I think it's shitty no matter what, and I think what I did was shitty.
So it's all around shitty. But what could have happened differently?
I also wish that whatever the fuck is wrong with my brain chemistry could have been dealt with earlier.
yes.
Like when?
A teenager.
I mean, I wish it could have been dealt with as a kid. Like,
What, like 12?
yeah. I mean, I mean, it's hard, and I'm able to look at it both like as who I was as a kid and as a parent, you know? And so as a parent, I don't know what's going on inside of my kid's head. But as a child, I remember crying by myself because my friends were going to go to hell, you know? And so there was like a very deep emotional life that was present at a young age. And there was for sure anxiety that was present from a very young age as well. And I can only really identify that in terms of, say, shyness, which isn't something that maybe you're going to address or medicate or
worry.
worry.
I was a worried kid.
Yeah.
I worried about a lot of things. Like,
But I mean, there wasn't much in my childhood that directly talked about what it was like to be an anxious person.
no, anxiety was not. It wasn't
Yeah.
a thing. Like,
Right.
when we were teenagers, that wasn't really like.
Right. Depression was a thing, anxiety was not.
It was like depression, manic,
Schizophrenia, yeah,
schizophrenia,
bipolar.
and
Yeah.
like panic attacks. That was like the closest.
Yeah, panic wasn't.
I feel like panic attacks was like the closest thing they had
Yeah.
to anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But that was more extreme than what I was experiencing at that time. I definitely, like, when I hit puberty, panic attacks were definitely a thing.
Panic attacks were awful.
For me, the part where I get stuck at is I kind of feel like everybody has those feelings at that stage of life. So, like, is there a solution? Should, like, literally all teens be on some kind of medication? Like,
No,
I don't
I just
know.
think that having an awareness about it makes world, at least for me, makes a world of difference. Being able to say, like, yeah, what I have is anxiety.
Right.
That's why I'm reacting the way I am.
Right.
That's why I feel the way I do. Like, and yeah, I think a lot of people at that age, especially because of the hormone surges, like a lot of people experience that.
So like even just being able to like talk about it and acknowledge it would have been helpful.
Yes.
So I didn't get diagnosed with an anxiety disorder until I was an undergraduate, and I was an old undergraduate, and I took an extraordinarily difficult class. And it was so hard that the way my anxiety manifested was that I would read my textbook and it was total gibberish. And I'd go back over it and it was total gibberish. And I thought maybe I had like a brain tumor. I thought maybe like there was something seriously wrong with my psyche. And thankfully, there was a health center available to students that I went to and saw a doctor, and he was like, "Oh, honey, you have anxiety. Let me get you on the right medication." And it changed my life. So for one, having the correct medication was life-changing, but almost a bigger influence was having a correct diagnosis, because then I could go into a situation that made me anxious and get the physical manifestations of my disorder.
And be able to identify it.
Yeah, and be able to look at that and be like, my body feels this way because of this thing. And I can acknowledge that this thing is there inside of my body and go into this situation, and, it's not really a big deal. Like, it's there, and I acknowledge it, and it's just my brain chemistry or whatever, but it doesn't need to dictate my actions. And there was a lot of my young adulthood before my disorder was diagnosed that I made decisions based on what my anxiety dictated I needed to do that were a real handicap.
Well, because I think a lot of anxiety is not knowing. Like, that's what you're anxious about.
Yeah.
And really, with anxiety, knowledge is power.
Yeah, 100%.
And so, like, once you know, like, oh, the thing that I'm feeling is anxiety.
Yeah.
And it is manifesting in XYZ ways.
Yeah.
Like, because logically, you're like, oh, okay, I know what that is.
Yeah.
And then it stops being so scary.
I can compartmentalize that. I can put it away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not having a heart attack right now.
Right.
My heart is just racing because I feel anxious about XYZ.
Yeah.
And now it's making my heart race. And now I am having a phantom arm pain because my brain is telling me that I'm having a heart attack because of how anxious I am.
Right.
As they said, a mental health diagnosis can be the first step in managing mental illness, but that also requires access to healthcare and specifically mental health services. So I'm going to leave you with some easily accessible resources. My friend Katie has a master's in social work, and for the past 5 years, she's been working closely with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP. In March, she went with them to the state capitol in Sacramento to meet with lawmakers to advocate for suicide prevention bills and youth mental health education in schools. Here's how she initially got involved with them.
I personally needed help and some support for what I was experiencing in regards to mental health. And I went to one of their annual walks, their Out of the Darkness walks with my mom. And I fell in love, and it's something that I wanted to do forever and be involved in. Anywhere from like 500 to 5,000 people come together, and they do a 3-mile walk in unity to come together for suicide and for mental health. And it's a place where people can feel supported and loved, whether you are a suicide attempt survivor, or you've lost one of your loved ones from suicide, what have you, or you just know someone who is affected by suicide. It's a place where everyone can just get together and like a sense of community, that you're not alone. I love it. It's amazing.
Katie's going to drop some knowledge, resources for those who are struggling and for anyone who has been impacted by suicide.
I can give you plenty of resources, but not everyone remembers all of them. So the number one, this is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, but you can also use them for, mental health as well. You can call 1-800-273-8255. It's easier to remember, 1-800-273-TALK, TALK. But if you don't feel like talking on the phone, you can also text or whatever you want, but you text anything you want. And the number that you text to is 741-741. So sometimes people don't feel like they can even reach out when you're that sad. But if you can text, sometimes that's easier. Trevor Project, that is support for the LGBTQ youth. That's also with an AFSP, so American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, afsp.org. They have countless resources for any kind of person, population, anyone regarding mental health. That's, I swear by it. NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, but they're also a great resource. So AFSP and NAMI. NAMI and AFSP, they both have tons of support groups, trainings, webinars, videos. You'll find something for anyone, really. Even when I was going through my funky times, my parents who didn't know what they were dealing with, when I was feeling really depressed and anxious, I felt super alone and like no one would understand. And I introduced NAMI to my parents and they started going to support groups. And then they came back to me, they were going every week and they said, Katie, we had no idea what you were going through. And this has been super helpful. They knew how to then validate me, how to listen, how to talk with me. I mean, there's so much out there, so many resources for anyone.
That's amazing.
Anxiety and depression is so common in, children, adolescents, teens, and upward and onward. Blanket statement here, but I would say generally, majority of the population, if not all of us, have at least a mild depression because of COVID and all of the impacts that it's causing in our lives. But everyone's going through some sort of funkiness, whether it's depression or anxiety or stress or loneliness, just this cloud over all of us right now.
The main thing Katie and I want you to know is
you're not alone and that it's okay to not be okay. Everyone has the power within themselves to get through things.
You know what the hardest part of this episode was? It wasn't the sadness. It wasn't the fear. It wasn't the long-term repercussions. It was the anger. There was a lot of anger, most of which ended up on the cutting room floor. But that anger was appropriate and it was needed to be expressed out loud, especially after being bottled up for so long. But what happens after the anger? What happens after the anger loses its power as it's thrust into the light? Grace. Grace comes next, a mercy or pardon that's not asked for and not earned. And here's the thing, that grace isn't just for PJ, it expands right back at us, for the ways that we've hurt other people and the ways that we choose to hurt ourselves. My favorite priest, Nadia Bowles-Weber, tells the story of long-suffering Job in the Bible. The devil in that story is called Hasatan, which means the accuser, and when she describes it, she asks, "What are the things you continually say about yourself to yourself?" For most of us, what we say about ourselves is not kind, and those words have power. So if you're struggling with the accuser in your brain, remember, talk saves lives. Call your doctor for advice, call or text the Lifeline, reach out to a friend. And always give yourself some grace, because you are loved.